Alright guys, welcome back to Mr. Post Frame. Today our video is going to be all about preparing our trusses. So it's just going to be truss prep, how we mark the top for our purlins, how we mark the bottom for our ceiling joist, all that kind of good stuff. Before we get going, if you are looking to design your own barndominium, garage, shop, reach out to us, design at Mr. Post Frame. We can help you out with that. We design for people all over the country. Our plans are amazing. They got lots of structural detail included in them. Also, for you self-builders out there, check out our Patreon group. It's a self-build group. It's getting to be a great community of other self-builders that are sharing their journey along with talking about different self-building topics. Our goal with this is to make you guys successful building your own barndominium, garage, shop. Check that out. But let's go ahead and jump into the show. Alright, next step is to put our trusses up. We're going to start with an end truss. The end trusses are different from the common trusses in that they have 2x4s. Usually they go across horizontally, so you have places to screw your steel to. So we have 2 of those, and we have 9 commons on this building. The truss manufacturer that I get these from has these pre-marked. The only thing I have to change is the mark up the top for the purlin, so I can make it match the ridge that I get. I use a 16-inch ridge, so I just have to make sure that that top purlin is where I need it to be. And then you can see the 24-inch marks are already there. I always start at the bottom with those if they're not there, and then I work all the way up to the top, and then I just put a purlin where I need it for a nailer for the ridge cap. But that's about it. You can mark all of your bottom cord for your joist spacing if you want. That will save you some time later. It makes it easier doing it down here. So really, just got to get all these metal bands off, and then we will check this one and get it ready. 2 ways you can get these metal bands off. I'll show you both ways. First way is just take your hammer, put it in there like so. And then some guys will just take it and hit it. I like doing it with the claw better than hitting it. It's got a little wet, but most of the time with your trusses you'll get an installation packet, and it'll tell you where to put your bracing, all that kind of good stuff. So it's a good idea to read through this and kind of see what it has to say. That's all the truss specs. It's even got like points of contact
for lifting.
I probably violate that to 60 degrees. No, maybe not. Half the truss length you should be spread across is what it says. So it shows you on here the different ways to lift your truss. Spreader bar, straps. It's a different kind of spreader bar. All right, so we use a 16-inch ridge cap. So that means the ridge goes down 8 inches each way. But we're doing purlins on edge, So the way it works out is I need to measure 6.5 inches down, and that's the bottom side of my top purlin. So this mark we're gonna forget about. We're gonna put our tape measure right at the peak, mark 6.5 inches, and then our purlin's gonna go right there. And if you're trying to figure this out, this can be kind of difficult. What you need to do is take a couple 2x4s and put them right here, just hold them there, and make sure you're measuring from the peak, because that distance is going to be different 3.5 inches up versus right here. That's why it's only 6.5 and not 8, if that makes sense. All right guys, so we're jumping to my house. I built this little model, Justin and I did, to kind of give you guys clarification on why I measure 6.5 inches down for my top purlin, and that's to the bottom side of my top purlin. And it works for both a 412 and 512 roof pitch. So this rafter here, which is simulating a truss, is cut at 412. This one is cut at 512, and I have it right along this line, so there's a visual line showing where that peak would be if you kept going up. I have measured down from the peak 6.5 inches on both sides, both on the 512 and 412. And so if I take, this is simulating a purlin, if I line that up on the bottom side and I line it up with where it would meet if this peak kept going up straight, the 512 were just at like 7 7/8 to 8 inches. So this would work with a 16-inch ridge, because 8 inches of the ridge would come down this side, and that puts us perfectly on this to put a screw through the screw flange of the ridge. If we go over here to the 412 side and we line it up with our 6.5 inch mark, and we do the same thing, we are at 7 3/4 to 7 7/8, right in there. I go down, let me get it right. About 7 13/16 is what it ends up being. So either way, if at 6.5 inches down, if you mark the top of your truss with a 16-inch ridge, you'd be able to put a screw through your screw flange on your ridge and it would hit the purlin. Now, obviously if you change the size of your ridge, if you went down to a 12-inch ridge, you're going to have to figure that out. But the reason I did this is you can't just assume to measure, because you have a 16-inch ridge, half of that is 8 inches. If you just measure down 8 inches on the top of your truss, your mark would be down here, and you'd end up putting a screw through and missing your top purlin. So hopefully that makes sense and brings clarification. If not, I don't know what to tell you. Alright, I'm not doing the interior on this one, but one beneficial thing is to mark all your ceiling joist locations before you put your trusses up. Then you're not trying to pull a tape across. If you got a lift, it's not too bad. But it's real easy to do it down here on the ground. So we have an 8.5 inch wall cavity. So I'm gonna mark 8.5 inches. That's the edge of my interior wall. So my first ceiling joist will be right there. And now I can pull 24 on center all the way across. The one thing you have to make sure of is that you measure from the same side of the truss each time, and that side of the truss is going on the same side of the building every time. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these out. If you don't have somebody to hold the tape, you just take a nail to hold your tape measure, and whatever side of the line you want to pull from is fine, doesn't make any difference. You just put a nail in there, and then you can pull the 24s across. So then my last 24 inches on center ended here, so I just got to measure in 8.5 inches from here, make a mark, and now I have my layout all done for my ceiling joist. So it'll be nice and easy to put all the brackets on for whoever has to do that. Alright, so this job we're using Purlin Screws. I switched to Purlin Screws. The main reason is because the guys really couldn't drive a Purlin nail straight to save their life. So these are a little bit easier to pull in, and these have a lot more uplift strength. So it is a benefit. They're easier to put in, more uplift strength, and that's what they're made for. So a little bit more expensive. But if you're going to do your own building, I would highly suggest spending the extra, 20 cents a screw and getting these. Alright, I have come to the conclusion today, finally, that the best way to order your trusses is the exact width of your building, no overhang, with the heel height that you want. And then just make an overhang jack to acquire your whatever kind of overhang you want. We want an 18-inch overhang on this, so I made an overhang jack. It's just a 2x4. You have to have these. If you're going to do purlins on end, so they're going to be nailed in upright on the top core of your truss has to be built with it has to be built for that. And a lot of times the truss manufacturers, for some reason, I feel like they can't get it right every time. So I'm gonna, from here on out, order my trusses the exact width, heel height, and just make my overhang jacks. This is how I always used to do it. I would say the only downside is your first purlin up, you have to toe screw it in here, because this overhang jack's gonna go up the top of the truss a ways. I guess that's the only downside, and why I was hoping that I could just have the overhangs built the way I wanted them. So you cut your roof pitch on one end, line up right there. There you have it. It should measure 16.5, which it does. Put your fascia board on, and you're at 18 inches. When you're getting ready to lift your trusses, there's a lot of things to consider. How wide they are, how tall they are, what piece of equipment are you using to lift them. On a single story, you can easily do that with a skid steer. But when you get into a 2-story building, 18-foot sidewall, 19-foot sidewall, your best bet is a telehandler, because you have way more lifting capacity and height than what you really need, and it makes life a lot easier. We've done enough with the teleskid. I kind of know what my limits are. And so these trusses are only 36 foot wide, so weight is not an issue. So I just have to make sure that my boom has enough rigidity lifting it, and I can get the height. Whenever you do your end truss, wherever you strap it, you got to think about where the columns are going to be. So my column's about right here, so I'm just on the outside of that. That works for me. I like using straps over truss hooks because truss hooks can fall off, this cannot. So once I latch this on, unless it breaks, it can't come off, and I like that assurity. So if somebody forgets to do their job and keep an eye on the truss hooks, you could end up dropping a truss or something. So I like using straps. If you get into a really wide truss, we'll run a 20-foot 2x4 on the bottom cord and screw it in to give it more rigidity. You also should look at getting a truss spreader bar once you get up to a higher, a wider truss as well. And if you look at your instructions, it'll tell you kind of what the basic rules are. At least the ones I get, they'll tell you, hey, you need to use a truss spreader bar. This is where you should lift from. This is where you shouldn't lift from. All that kind of good stuff. So we're gonna get the end truss up, and then the inside common trusses, I can kind of put my straps wherever I need to put them because there are no columns in the middle. They're free span trusses, so they're only gonna make contact with columns on the outside sidewalls. So we're gonna get this all hooked up to the boom. I gotta get my boom all extended. I gotta get some chains on it to give it side to side rigidity. And then hopefully the guys will be ready and we can start putting these up. All right, so we're up here. After everything's installed, we're just gonna talk about a couple things. These are our overhang jacks. This is what it looks like once the purlins are installed, the OSB sheathing is installed. These overhang jacks are 36 inches long. So from this point there up to here, we are 36 inches. There would be no problem with you extending them up to here if you wanted to. If you have a 2-foot overhang, these are 18-inch overhangs, you would have to make that longer, obviously. So our first purlin runs in a line. So when you use overhang jacks, you have to toenail or screw these in. You can put 2x4 hangers here if you like. We do not. I screw in from the ends, and then when I go to the next one, I'll just have to run a toe screw at a slight angle to get the next one. And then from there, we are 2 foot on center. We will cover the installation of the truss in a later video. But you can see we'll use a lag just to suck this all together before we nail it, and eventually we will run a 1/2-inch through bolt through here. All right, that's gonna be a wrap on today's video. That's all about the truss prep. And so the next video in this series will be us installing the trusses, so we'll show you how we do that. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends, and we'll catch you on the next video.